the helm of their business.
Exactly. Any of their future business is gone. They're basically doomed. So, yes. I don't know.
That's more of an opinion, though. It's not,
It is.
I wouldn't say that's evidence against it. So,
Yeah.
you haven't convinced me against it yet. Continue.
Okay. Next, here we go. This one will be more convincing to you. So while the wreck provided some evidence in favor of the swap theory, there was almost more evidence recovered from the wreck that suggested that the wreck really was the Titanic. So the Titanic's identification number, like we mentioned, was 401, and it is stamped in multiple places on the wreck, on furniture and other artifacts found by salvagers. So would they go through all this trouble to go and replace even furniture and decor on the ships and go around stamping everything with 401, knowing it was just going to be
and
sunk
they
anyway?
Yeah, and they would have no way of knowing that people would be able to recover that in the future.
Exactly.
So it's not like they would have predicted that and been like,
Right.
all right, we should probably stamp everything.
Exactly. So that's something that makes me rethink it a little bit. It's definitely possible, but it seems like a lot of effort for them to go through and switch
everything.
everything.
If they weren't smart enough to think of the fact that this would literally destroy their reputation.
Yeah.
And probably do worse for the company than just taking the hit of having a ship that didn't run anymore.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
All right, further convinced.
All right.
This theory is not correct.
Another thing. So basically, Titanic scholars and historians say that proponents of the insurance swap theory have overstated how similar the two ships were. So while they were superficially alike, there were several important structural differences, as well as aesthetic changes made to Titanic to distinguish it from its sister. This is kind of a common argument. So some people are always arguing that only the most knowledgeable people would have been able to tell the difference between the Titanic and the Olympic, because they were very small details. But then this says, no, actually, there were these kind of bigger areas of the ships that were significantly different that anyone would have been able to notice. So this says the first class A deck on Titanic was enclosed in a glass screen, but was open on the Olympic. Titanic's wheelhouse was flat at the front and the Olympic's curved. Olympic's B deck had a first-class promenade, whereas Titanic had private verandas and suites. Indeed, many passengers were booked into the suites, an impossibility if the ship really was the Olympic. So they would have had to build suites onto the Olympic to be able to convincingly say it was the Titanic. Mm-hmm. But then I'm thinking, okay, so if the Olympic didn't actually have these first-class suites, and a lot of the first-class passengers ended up canceling anyway.
Wait, say that again?
So basically, that's going to be kind of confusing, but it said the Titanic had private suites on its B deck, and the Olympic had just a promenade, so just a walkway, open area.
Yeah.
So if they had switched to the Titanic with the Olympic, they would have had to build all these suites.
But why would they build them if all of these people that would be staying in the suites weren't actually getting on the ship?
Exactly. So that would make it easier for them to get away with that one.
But again, then why would those people ever book the tickets if they knew it was going to go down anyways? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're back to that again.
Yeah. Or maybe they had booked their tickets before this plan was ever conceived.
And then, in which case, the suites would have been built. Because, all of that kind of reconstruction would have been done before. Well, wait.
Well, so if they booked their tickets and then they thought of this plan and then they were like, oh, wait, we're switching it. We don't have suites. We've got to tell all these people to cancel. Or we have to cancel their...
Yeah.
So that could be a possibility. They could have said, we are having... Due to scheduling difficulties, you can't come anymore.
People didn't know at all. They just didn't want to build the suites to accommodate them, so they had to say, no, don't come.
That's a possibility. But
anyways,
that's just out of my mind, so I just made that up.
Oh, okay.
So that just came to me when I was
Lauren's creating
reading that.
conspiracy theories.
And basically the last one is that deliberately sinking a ship is very difficult, especially one engineered to be so unsinkable. Yes. So, could plotters really have engineered something so complex as the sinking of the world's largest vessel in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? With so many variables and so many things that could go wrong, how could they be sure they would succeed? If their plan was discovered, the consequences would have been dire. The perpetrators would be blamed for the deaths of 1,500 people, perhaps even charged with their murder. Would the likes of White Star Line, and J.P. Morgan, a billionaire who could afford any potential losses on the Olympic, really risk the gallows for an insurance scam?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you heard of white-collar crime? Like, people do that shit all the time.
Right, exactly. To me, I feel like... I don't know. I wonder how much money it was that they were...
Well, if it was millions in the 1912... When was it? The 1918?
1912. Wait.
There's a lot of money back then. A lot of money. What's the conversion rate? What's that now? Okay. $1 million back then would be the equivalent to $25 million today.
Oh, okay. So
not a huge difference. $1 million in 1912 versus $25 million now. So, like, $25 million. I don't think anyone would create that level of insurance fraud for $25 million, especially a company that's like a huge multi-million-dollar company.
Well, but I just gave you the number 1 million to just see how, like, what the multiplication rate was. No, was. Like, say it was like actually even then, 10 or 20 million back then.
Yeah, but even then. So it's like 25 times.
Yeah.
More than what it would have been back then.
Well, so...
I don't think it would have been worth it unless it was in the... Like, today, it would not be... Mm-hmm. Companies would not deem it worth it unless it's in, like, the multiple billions.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, how much...
Today...
I wonder how much it would have cost them to just, like... to just scrap that ship, you know?
Exactly.
How much was that ship worth?
Yeah, and I agree, like, today they would never do it for that amount of money, but back then, like, it would just be so much easier to get away with it back then.
Yeah.
And it does say that fraud like that was common, so, but, I don't know. I think it was a really high-profile ship, and, like, they knew how much bad publicity it would bring. So
it was an iceberg.
Could be.
Okay. What's the second conspiracy?
Second conspiracy, and I actually, someone mentioned this in the comments of that first article I was referencing. Mm-hmm. This one has to do with J.P. Morgan.
Okay. Sips tea.
All right. Let me get to this in my notes. Okay, so basically the theory goes that, okay, this theory has to do directly with J.P. Morgan. Basically, this theory says that J.P. Morgan sank the Titanic in order to pave the way for the establishment of the Federal Reserve Bank in the U.S. Yes.
Which is a privately owned bank, just in case anyone was wondering.
Mm-hmm. Right, and you wouldn't think so, being that it's called the Federal Reserve.
Again, other conspiracy, but let's move on.
Anyway. The bank's creation was reportedly opposed by millionaire John Jacob Astor, mining magnate Benjamin Guggenheim, and Macy's co-owner.
I told you.
Isidore Straus. Yes, you're right. These three wealthy men did indeed lose their lives when the Titanic sank. Suspicious. So, we have J.P. Morgan, who is set to sail on the Titanic, canceled last minute, and he just happens to be in favor of the Federal Reserve Bank. And then these three very wealthy, very prominent men who were known to be opposed to the Federal Reserve just happened to be on the Titanic and all died.
That's spooky.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly bet the actual what actually happened was just like a combination of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like the White Star Alliance knew that JP Morgan didn't like these people, and he was like, well, he's got a lot of money, let's get him in on it, and like he'll help us plan it and finance it, and we can give him a chunk of the sum. Ooh. Okay, sorry. Is there evidence to support this one?
Well,
that's kind of
maybe they were like, let's just kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah,
we can get our insurance money, and we can make the Federal Reserve if we just do this.
Happening. Isn't the Federal Reserve owned by the Rothschilds?
I'm not sure.
Right family.
You know what? I saw a list the other day, and it was by some like pretty prominent news website like Bloomberg or something, and it was like the top 10 richest families in the world. The Rothschilds were not on.
They do that intentionally.
I know.
Because they don't want people to know how much money they have, because then it draws attention to them.
Exactly. And I don't think the Morgans were on there either.
Girl, I listen to Mile Higher too. I know.
I know. It's so ridiculous. And there are so many comments saying, hello, where are the Rothschilds, Morgans? Excuse me.
Right. Why are they not on this list?
Yeah. I mean, for woke people like us, it's very obvious. But
do you feel that we are woke, or are we crazy? Or a little bit of both? I feel like you have to be crazy to be woke. Isn't there like a phrase that's like, something about like you have to have a little bit of mad to be genius? Oh, it's a Panic at the Disco song. It's called Crazy Equals Genius. Okay, anyways, go look that song up. Okay,
but I feel like a lot more younger people these days are woke, so I don't think we're crazy. I think it's becoming more common.
So yeah, I'm definitely buying that this was like a culmination of everything. The only thing that makes me think that it was not a swap was that, like, I don't know if I believe the swap thing because of the fact that they were all labeled with the Titanic's number. Mm-hmm. But is there a way that they could have changed that in records? Like, it would have been easier to go into, like, the official records and change the number that's tied to the Titanic than what's tied to the Olympic. You know? You never know.
Possibly, yes. But it would make sense that the Olympic was number 400 and Titanic was 401 because the Olympic was built first. So if they're numbering these ships in the order that they were built, 400, 401, that does make sense. So if they would have gone back and switched it, they would have had to make the Titanic be 400 and the Olympic be 401.
Was the Olympic 400?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, well, that theory is shot to shit then. And there's not that little square hole.
These are the portholes that we talked about earlier, how they're different. Oh, actually, wait, I think I was saying it wrong earlier. Sorry, the portholes are the round holes you see in the bottom photo.
Yes.
And the windows are actually the things that were different that I mentioned way back in the beginning.
So the picture that Lauren sent me, the windows of the wreck, of the actual wreck, so it's like a picture of it on the ocean floor, are like tall and skinny, and there is a little square window slightly below them and off to the side. And then if the picture of the Titanic, when it's actually like docked, photo of the actual Titanic is like they're square, regular square, so they're not long and rectangular, they're square, and there's no like small square window in the bottom off to the right. That was like really bad explanation, but
we'll link these photos. We can we'll link them somewhere in our description because I have links.
Okay.
So
so and then it shows a picture, it also shows a picture of the RMS Olympic when it's docked, and it looks exactly the same as the wreckage that's on the ocean floor.
I think seeing photos of the actual wreck is just so...
I just can't get over the fact that everything was labeled with 401. That's what I can't get over.
If that one fact was different, if that fact supported the swap, I would be completely convinced.
Yes.
It's just that one thing that is, and maybe they did go to the effort of switching everything, but